Welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont from DuPont Wealth Solutions. As a practicing advisor and attorney, Greg teaches pre-retirees how to reduce debt and taxes and save with less risk so they have more spendable income and plan their way to a better life. Join us for this journey where Greg draws on years of experience and guest experts to help listeners achieve more spendable income for retirement.
Hello and welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont of DuPont Wealth Solutions. Greg, it is so good to be back with you again.
Eric, it's wonderful to be with you again. And we're going to try to recover from our last conversation, aren't we?
Yeah, and you had a guest on. That was Kirk. And remind the audience of Kirk's last name and what he does.
Kirk Chisholm. Kirk is a friend of mine, obviously, and he is part of the longest running money-based podcast on the internet world, right?
Yeah.
Called Money Tree Investing. And he's a specialist in alternative investments and those kind of things. But he's got his ear to the conversations that many informed investors are having. And he shared with us, the picture of what many experts are saying is the road ahead. And it was pretty bleak, wasn't it, Eric?
It wasn't the fun podcast, but it was incredibly informative. I mean, obviously that guy knows what he's talking about. You know what you're talking about. And when you get two brains together like that to speak through this, even though, yes, you're right, it's bleak. I know that you've got some, thoughts on that podcast and what can be done.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kirk and I have crossed paths over the years, and he was one of the people that I was with when I came up with my March to $1 Million incentive and my intention to try to positively impact 1 million lives. And when I shared that with him, he immediately said, "Hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to go for 2 million." But, in his intention as he was talking in our last conversation and mine as well, and talking today is we are headed towards some stormy seas.
Yes.
And we're going to get through them. We've got through them before, but people need to be prepared, as Kirk so wonderfully set forth, that, we're heading back into the 70s again. And he said he doesn't want disco back. My wife is looking for bell bottoms back, so I'm not sure. She'd love it if disco came back. What about your wife?
I don't know about the bell bottoms, but I'm curious about the shoes with the fish inside. Like,
there you go.
The big shoes. I don't know how long the fish last. I don't want to torture them, but just to watch them swim as I sit here, at my desk.
Well, it'll be the little things as we go forward that we find joy in, like terrariums under our feet.
There's an analogy there somewhere about having a terrarium under your feet, but we won't go there. It's funny because there were so many pieces of the 70s that he referred to, and going back to that, speaking about gold, and then you guys got into cryptocurrency, which is fascinating to me and also very scary, right? Because of seeing what Luna did, over the period of 2 days, lost 97% of its value or whatever. I'm not in it just personally because it does make me nervous. And I think he put it's a speculation, correct?
Yeah. It's subject to manipulation and it's only something to be playing with money that you're not relying upon.
Yeah. So what else, what other takeaways can we really talk about from that last podcast?
So kind of, I'll highlight, but it's the lowlights, right? Essentially when talking about the market, in markets from all assets, that Kirk went through everything from bonds to real estate to cryptocurrency. He went through the whole gamut. The broad takeaway from that for listeners that don't feel like they want to go back and listen to that is that there are pockets that may be productive, but very few pockets, and it's not the time to be playing by the old rules. It's time to be looking, as he said, it's a new paradigm. And there was one thing that he didn't really have the time to drill down in that I want to talk about here today is part of that paradigm shift, and it is human capital. Because as Kirk pointed out, so many places where traditional capital, the investments that we have, those are going to be struggling for the next several years. But where we are right now, it's time for renewed view of ourselves and the human capital that we provide. Because as Kirk pointed out, cash at a loss of maybe 8% a year with inflation is one of the things that he pointed out as being one of the safer investments.
Yeah.
When you compare that with human capital, you compare that with raising of wages, finally catching up somewhat. That's part of the inflationary spiral. That's a problem. But you recall when we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about the impression that the book Life Force had on me, about all of the things that are coming on with the development of new medicines and longevity and all that. And do you recall one of the takeaways I share with you about how that's going to change people's view of work going forward?
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming you're speaking about when we thought we would be done, right? I mean, it was like everybody had a line in the sand, 65, I retire, that's it. I think part of that was finding more joy in what you do so that you can work longer with joy and be happy about it, because that may be something. Because if we're living 35 to 40 years longer, then in retirement, the standard of, having 20 years worth of money saved up or, to draw off of that goes out the window. You've got to work longer. You've got to be thinking about working longer, even though nobody likes the idea necessarily, but maybe that paradigm of doing what you love and enjoy, then it doesn't feel as much like work. Am I about on point?
Yeah. That's where I was heading with that. Yeah. The once we grab the concept that we're not gonna die as early as we thought we were, and obviously if you fall out of a plane, right, or something stupid comes around, but if we are going to live longer, in every great era of change and strife, there are opportunities. So right now, where is the opportunity? As we look for the next few years, where is the opportunity? And the opportunity may not lie in traditional investments. Where it lies is with yourself in human capital, because there's a competitive marketplace. You can get jobs.
Yes.
You can get decent jobs, because employers like myself are struggling to find good people to work for us. And employers like myself, that offer opportunities for people to be engaged and to have that second career, one that personally I find very fulfilling. That this is what people need to be thinking about, because as Kirk was talking about, we're just trying to make sure that people are aligned for the lifeboat. Get on the lifeboat. If you are burning yourself at the core, trying to get to a finish line of retirement in 2-3 years, you're likely looking at the comparison that you're retiring in 1975.
Yeah.
And what did that lead to in 76, 77, 78? And what would that do to your long-term viability, especially if you added on, another 10, 15 years because of medicine?
Yeah. So that's interesting. And for those that are in their careers, right? And I don't want to just separate it by age, but maybe 40 and above that have been in a career, maybe even 35 and above, that are in an established career. When you're at 50, 55, knowing, okay, I may have to work a few more years, that you're probably at a pretty good salary, right? You're in a career that is paying you well because you've established yourself. But what about the younger generation, Greg? Because that's what we hear a lot about, is that, and I don't want to just term it millennials, but people in their 20s, a lot of them are complaining about the jobs that are out there, the wages that are out there. They're just starting. And to hear that they're going to have to rely on themselves, there's a lot of kind of uproar about corporations not caring about their employees, which we've seen a downturn in that because, pensions have gone away and they don't necessarily want somebody around for 35 to 40 years. A lot of layoffs, so on and so forth. How do we get them to understand that it's really up to them, kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps without sounding condescending or without empathy for the situation they're in, not being able to buy a home and the things that we've talked about on this podcast before?
So when you expand your timeline of how long you're going to be working, then you start looking at it as a series of events. It's not like our parents.
Yeah.
Or maybe it happened before your parents and my parents. As the whole idea of employment with one place fractured many years ago. You kind of think about it. If you look at the evolution of us as employees and wage earners, it's in the 1800s, right? We were all agrarians, other than a few merchants on the street, and we worked until we died. Then we had the Industrial Revolution, where we worked until we were beaten up and spit out by the man, and died soon thereafter. And then it's just been a slow evolution of what it is like to be an adult, And so if we talk about, the younger, I talked to my daughter, she's going to be 20 this summer. I think I got that right. Going to be 20 this summer, and she's studying to be a teacher. And I contrast her with my younger sister, who is a teacher, she's 3 years my younger. And so she spent her whole lifetime in a school system as a teacher, and looking for that finish line of retirement. And everybody knows teachers, everyone knows how much of a grind that can be. So, I'm not going to interfere with my daughter's choice right now. I think it's a great choice for her.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's going to be a 40-year career kind of choice, because we got so much change on the horizon, and the people that are in their first decades of work, it's time for people to look at it differently. This is chapter 1. What's chapter 2 going to look like? And when we take it back to people that are more in their later years of working, and now they're looking at this future on the horizon that says, wow, this could be a struggle for me if I retire now. Well, maybe the answer is not retiring now, but taking a sabbatical now. Take a little time, catch your breath, and then come back in. Because as we talked about before in this podcast, there are so many economic and demographic and sociological changes on the horizon, let alone with health, that a mature, experienced workforce is going to be able to find jobs that they want, that they will enjoy, because the market has to respond, because they can't find enough people to do the jobs.
Yeah.
So there's going to be this evolution of the workplace. And that really is, I believe, going to be the beneficial change that we see coming out of this repeat of the 70s, that there's going to be a whole new look at the way it is to earn a living and to live as an adult.
Are you having conversations right now based on the last podcast, the information that you have? Are you having these conversations actively right now with your clients as far as, hey, let's take a look at the plan and here's what we're, facing or could be facing over the next couple of years? And how do you see those conversations going?
So a couple of things. First of all, when we're having, with my clients, Kirk is much more of a market-based advisor. I am more of a safe money advisor. And that's why he and I are kind of a team that way. But when he said that cash that's just losing money or because of inflation is maybe your best solution, well, for my clients, that's where we have the annuities in place where we know that they're not going to lose value. But the younger people, as we're starting to have the conversation and the journey towards what the future is going to be, we're absolutely having this conversation. Because they are struggling to live their life. And wasn't that an eye-opener when Kirk was talking about the effect of the increase of interest rate on a mortgage payment?
Absolutely.
And so you look at the people that want to buy houses going forward that couldn't get in while we had the gold rush because of student loans. It all is fitting together that this means that we've got to take a step back look at a longer view, because when we have that longer view, then we don't need to accumulate as much for retirement. It's farther down the road. We got more time value of money. We have that longer view. We don't have to be quite as concerned that this job is a piece of crap and I don't want to be here. I'm going to go find something else. It may not be the right job, the next one, but I'm going to find something else because I know I can. And so that's what's going to be key to people surviving this transition period, this paradigm shift that we are going to be in as an economy for the next, I think it's going to be a decade.
Yeah. And I don't remember if it was you that I was speaking with, and it could have been, but I've had so many conversations about longevity in general with friends and family. But somebody had said, and I have not looked up the stat, but if you look at the last 30 years, how much life has been added to us, right? In this last 30 years, I can't remember what the exact stat is, but it was something to the effect of within the next 20 years, they're going to expand the lifespan by at least 5 to 7 years. And beyond that, maybe even 10 within the next 10 years. You're talking 120 years old. And because of the technology and because of, better things. But yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know if I want to last that long, man. I'll just be honest.
Yeah. Well, and not wanting to, first of all, that presupposes I'm not physically healthy, right?
Yeah.
That's nobody wants to be old and decrepit for 75 years, right?
Yeah.
But take me out back, old yeller, if that's what's going to be like, right? But when you start thinking about the duration, what they're finding is there's really no biological reason why aging can't be reversed. Long story made short. And so now when you start thinking about a lifetime that is going to be 100 years, why pack all of my work years into 25 or 30 even? Let's enjoy life. And the more that we enjoy life, the more productive we can be. The more we don't say, I don't want to live that long. We'll say, wow, I can't wait to see what it's going to be like in another 50 years when I could be on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
It's a paradigm shift that we have, as Kirk was talking about the 70s, the analog with the internet and Bitcoin, all that stuff. Well, there's also the analog with the internet and silicon, right? And the pace of change, the pace of knowledge growth, and now how it's bled through into medicine, as we talked about in the prior episode. That some real cool things on the horizon, but we got some tough times to get through between now and then. And that's why Kirk and I teamed up on these 2 episodes to, let people know what is possible on the horizon. We're not saying it is going to happen, but that better to be prepared for the worst, expect the best. And hopefully we've done a little bit of our joint parts of trying to impact as many people as we can through these 2 presentations.
Yeah. And I want to ask you one more question. I know we're getting low on time, and it's totally an opinion question, but when you're talking about a paradigm shift, don't you think it's going to really be on corporations to also have a paradigm shift about hiring people above 60 years old? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. They are going to be faced with no option but to do that. There's just not enough workers. Yeah. There's only so much offshoring they can do.
Yeah. And I think that's what has been the most heartbreaking thing in the last 15 to 20 years with some of my parents, friends. My dad's always been able to get a job. He's got plenty coming in, so he just gets it as a hobby. He'll work at Walmart for 3 months or, go do something else for a few months. But those that are really needing it and maybe needing a full-time job, they were almost unhireable. And I'm hoping that corporations look at this and see longevity and see how much wisdom, people over 60 have to offer and can really help a business out. Because
I'll add to that, because again, as you start looking at things a little differently, changing your perspective on it, what was one of the things that caused the companies to terminate older people? Well, they got to the higher point of their pay scale, and there is cost cutting, right? And if you now are looking broader and you're looking at comparing a retirement that's going to be overly stressed because you have lost that, versus maybe taking a job that's a little lesser than you were having before.
Yes.
Maybe more contribution based, more something that's going to serve their soul than to serve the corporate overlords. This is part of the societal paradigm shift that we're all going through.
That's a great point. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up today's podcast?
We talked about a lot of stress, a lot of dark stuff over the course of these last 2 episodes, but let's never lose sight of the fact that there really is a bright future on the horizon. We just have to get there, and the pace of change. If you think about what's happened just in the last decade in terms of advancements, the future is going to be very bright. But we got growing pains to go through here, and we'll see where that takes us. But overall, just hang in there, be well, and things will work out.
All right, Greg, I lied. I said I only had one more question. I got one more. This last podcast, very informative. If people want to continue this discussion with you, can they reach you somehow? I mean, I know that you've got contact information. How should they reach out?
Yeah, and so reach out to me, email me at greg@dupontwealth.com. That's greg@dupontwealth.com, or you give us a holler at 614-408-0004.
All right, Greg, thank you so much for your time today. This has been enjoyable and informative as usual.
Thank you, Eric.
You bet. And our last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Greg comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really, really easy to share these podcasts with family and friends, and we love for you to do that, and it creates a great discussion. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DuPont Wealth Solutions, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Your Financial Advocate. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DuPont Wealth Solutions. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.